Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Ealing Road podcast, where on tonight's show, we're going to be running through a disappointing day at Anfield on Sunday, this week's hot topic, as well as just going through the last few games before we get to the international break that's coming up just this week. Talking us through tonight is Craig. Craig, how are we, mate?
Yeah, not too shabby, mate. Thanks for having me on again.
Good stuff, good stuff. Dan's here too, mate. Dan, all good?
Yeah, all good. It was a decent weekend despite the result.
Yeah, no, I saw your Instagram stories. It looked like you had a good time, mate.
Great night. Best night out in the Premier League.
You reckon? Better than Newcastle?
I would say Liverpool, but I can understand why people say Newcastle.
I think out of the two, those two are definitely up there just because of how cheap they are. I know that there's this whole kind of weird myth that it's really cheap up north, but I think Newcastle and Liverpool are the only two places up north where it's cheap. You've got both Manchester's, which is basically like London. Leeds is deceptively like London, depending on where you go. Whereas Newcastle and Liverpool, you can get trebles for fivers and all that nonsense. But yeah, it looked like you had a good time, Dan. So let's get
into its music.
Known for its music, exactly that. Remember, guys, before we get going, just please do subscribe to our YouTube and Spotify channels, leave a rating as well, and also give us a follow on our socials. That's at the Ealing Road on Twitter and at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Right, Liverpool. First of all, Dan, what are your initial thoughts walking out of Anfield on Sunday?
Yeah, I thought we played much better than results suggest. I thought it was very harsh, the result. I was very impressed with Liverpool as well. But yeah, I think the difference really was in key moments, the quality told. And I'm sure we're going to go into it, but I think, we miss certain chances that they will take. And in games like this, you've got to take them, otherwise you will lose. But yeah, I was quite impressed with Liverpool as well. And yeah, I think 3-0 is a bit harsh, but we probably did deserve to lose. But I can't be too disheartened. It was always going to be a free hit, I think.
You echoing that, Craig?
I don't think I can say anything else. He's kind of hit the nail on the head perfectly. Yeah. The only thing I would say is we've just beaten by the better team this weekend, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think with the players they've got, man for man. I remember talking to Neil Atkinson before, and he said, he expects Liverpool to win because we've got better players in most positions on the pitch, if not all of them. And I think when you've got players like Salah, who is firing on all fronts and has been for the last 6 or 7 years, Nunez had a really good game, I thought, as well. It's going to be tough, especially if you don't take those chances. We'll go through the goals, but we should mention those chances in the first half. I think the first one, watching it back, I don't know what Wisser is doing there, Dan. He's kind of like, I don't think he realizes how much time he actually has when Ben Mee kind of hooks it back across the 6-yard box. He goes for the flick on, which if he'd have pulled it off and actually done it instead of just completely missed the ball and kind of just half-heartedly just jumped past it, I think we might have maybe crafted a bit of a chance. But it's one of those where I just don't think he realizes how much time he's got and as a consequence does nothing with it and just completely misses it, doesn't he?
Yeah, there was space, and I don't know if it was quite an awkward angle because it was obviously, I don't know, was it high or was it?
Yeah, it was kind of. It drops to him, and he's got quite a bit of time to think about it. But he decides to go for the flick on, and it just does not come off at all.
Yeah, I think normally in those situations you'd back him because I think he is normally quite composed, and like when he's given a chance, he's normally quite good in front of goal, but. Yeah, I mean, that was at the other end to the away end, so like it's really hard to see when you're in the stands like how close it is. But yeah. I mean, even after when it kind of dropped to Pinnock, I think in the end, it looked a massive chance, and normally I'd back Wisser in those situations.
We'll talk about Wisser's performance overall because he's another one. Like sort of every week when he doesn't score, people come out and the jury's out on Wisser. The people get really frustrated with him. And I think it's clear to see why sometimes he does just do things wrong and is really frustrating player because when he's on his game, he's really good. And when he's linking up with Brian, he's really good. But he struggled on Sunday. We'll get onto that. I think, Craig, the most clear-cut chance that we had, obviously Brian goes through on goal 1-on-1, gets on the right side of Trent Alexander-Arnold after another amazing ball by Matty Jensen. What are you thinking when he goes through 1-on-1? Because I don't know with Brian, I'm never convinced he's going to put these chances away. He'll score the difficult ones and he'll miss the sitters.
I'm thinking I wish it was Wisser going through.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I'm more confident when Wisser's going through 1-on-1 that he's going to finish more than Brian is. Now, don't get me wrong, there have been chances this season where Brian has gone through 1-on-1 and he's put it in the back of the net. most notably off the top of my head, Bournemouth's equaliser. The Bournemouth equaliser is the one where he's brought the ball down incredibly and then put it past the keeper in injury time, wasn't it? But I mean, he's done everything right. It's a great ball over the top. It's a great first touch out in front of him. Gets in front of Trent, as you say, the right side of Trent, and you're thinking, just put it in the back of the net. Just put it in the back of the net, or take it round the keeper. Do whatever you're gonna do. Just make a decision and do it. And he just sort of half-heartedly scoops the ball, and it was pretty easy to defend in the end, to clear the ball. But yeah, I just wish it was Wissa.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's a shame that last season, when he kind of, not a similar chance, but he did go through 1-on-1 and buried it, but it was offside. But yeah, I never really feel too confident with Brian. And even in that game against Bournemouth, when he buried the 1v1 that he had, he missed an absolute sitter in the second half as well. So it's like, with Brian, he's never going to have 3 shots and have 3 goals. There's always going to be 1 or 2 misses in there. We should talk about some players. I was going to talk about the goals, but I just think there's not too much to say on them. I think Onyeka probably should have done better defending Jota in the 3rd goal. Salah's first. I was watching it back on the highlights. I think Mee could have done better. It points to a talking point that we've got to talk about, because Mads Roerslev has come under a bit of stick on Twitter, as he does regularly throughout the season. But I think a lot of people are saying he's not good enough. And to be honest, I think he probably isn't good enough to quite cut it in the Prem as a fullback, but he does a job, which is why I like him. And he gets put in these positions when he's not that comfortable, when he's coming up against Salah, who's one of the best, if not the best winger in the league. And he does a job, and he tries to do a job, but unfortunately it's not quite come off for him on Sunday, just because of the calibre of opponent that he's coming up against. Dan, what are your thoughts on Mads Roerslev? Because he is one of those players that gets a lot of heat on Twitter.
Yeah, well, firstly, just looking at yesterday's game, he's a right back, and he was asked to play left back on the wrong side against the best right winger in the league. So there is a bit of a caveat there. I think generally when it's 1-on-1 defending, like I think he's okay. But I think in those types of games where we're playing a back 5 and we don't just want to hoof the ball back to them as soon as we get it back, I think he perhaps might be the biggest culprit at doing that, instead of remaining a bit more composed and trying to build something from the back. I think sometimes he just kicks it almost aimlessly, and it results in Liverpool coming straight back at us. And that's the only thing I would say. But I think it's also harder being a right footer just on the left-hand side, and also being able to do that. And obviously it wasn't natural for him.
Greg, what are your thoughts on Mads?
I want to go back to the last time we played a back 5, which was the Chelsea game, and he got to play on the right hand side because Hickey was obviously playing against Chelsea. And I think defensively he's a bit. I don't really know what the word I'm looking for is. I don't trust him fully, but he didn't have a bad game at Chelsea playing on that right side of a back 5. But then again, he had Aya, or just as the right centre back, covering for him a lot as well. So maybe I made him look a lot better than he actually was. But I would have rather we played Janelt left wing back. I still would have rather we played Janelt left wing back. Now, don't get me wrong, he might score against Salah, but I just feel like Dan just touched on there, having that left-footed player on the left side of back 5 would have helped us massively as well. Janelt's also a lot more comfortable on the ball. I'm not so panicky when the ball comes to him. And as Dan alluded to there, as soon as the ball comes to Mads, it's a get rid of it. It's got to go. It's got to go. There's no calmness to it. It always seems a bit rushed. So I think jury's still out on him. I think he's still quite young. He's got a lot of learning to do. And we're constantly changing that defence and who we play. So he's constantly playing different roles. So it's difficult for him to kind of make himself a homestead in that team. Do you know what I mean? Especially with the competition around him.
Yeah, I think it's a good point that you make about when he played against Chelsea, had Aya next to him, who was a rock that day and has been sort of throughout the last 4 games. Whereas Ben Mee, I felt really sorry for Mads Roerslev, because I was watching the highlights and I watched that second goal, Salah's opener, and it was really good play by Liverpool. And we have to give credit to them, like you did, Dan. they are a really good team, and I expect them to challenge for the title this season. But I think when Nunes picks up that ball, I think Ben Mee, he's like kind of backing off him. He hasn't got touch tight to him, so he can't make the challenge straight away. But Salah's going in behind him, and kind of when Salah scores, everyone turns around and looks at Roerslev as if to say, "You've dropped your man." And he did drop his man. He probably should have tracked him. But I think maybe with Aya next to him instead of Ben Mee, he's just come back into the side. He might have fared better on Sunday. I don't want to give Flecken any heat because he's had enough. Was anyone watching Salah's second and on the highlights and thinking maybe Flecken could have done better with that? Kind of just gave up as he walked towards the far post. Goalkeeper Craig?
I think it's a bit unfair to just blame him when from the away end.
I'm not blaming him, but I'm just looking at the highlights.
I'll word it differently. I think it's a bit unfair to single him out when from the away end. I don't know if Dan will agree with me. It looked like everyone just stopped. And then the ball's gone in the back of the net. And even, again, I'm hoping Dan will agree, the Liverpool fans just didn't seem to celebrate it. Everyone had stopped. The Liverpool fans did a bit of a yay. And then the ball was on the 6-yard line as if to take a goal kick. So everyone was like, well, don't know what's going on here anyway. But, first rule of football is you play to the whistle. And the fact that our defence, everyone, has just stopped playing is what's caused that. And I don't think it's fair to single Flecken out there.
I don't want to single out Flecken. You might be right, because watching back on the highlights, as soon as that ball goes in the back of the net, every Brentford player has got their hand up and is looking at the referee. So they've all kind of thought that it's going to get ruled out. But I was just watching it back and I was just thinking he's already kind of running towards the post, so he had momentum. If he'd have dived, he probably would have saved it. But anyway, we don't need to talk about Flecken because we're on the Flecken happiness train. We don't want to give him
good save for Van Dijk though from Flecken.
Great save, unbelievable save. Yeah, no, we give him his props there. Let's do want to talk about Wissa as well. We should also chat about the Endo VAR check. I tweeted out on the Eden Road Twitter that I thought it would have been quite harsh to give him a red. Having said that, with Paul Tierney's view of that tackle and the fact that it went to VAR, well, no, I guess they wouldn't have overturned it anyway, just because if there wasn't a red card, then they can't do anything about it. What were your thoughts on the red card, Dan? Did you see Thomas Frank's post-match comments? I mean, I thought he spoke quite well without damning the referees and blaming it on the referees completely. He said, in today's game, that is a red, and they want consistency. If De Silva's last season is a red, if the Copenhagen one, the Rashford against Copenhagen one is a red, etc. So what did you think about the tackle?
No, I generally agree with Thomas Frank. I mean, there's no question that it's a foul and a yellow at the very least. I can't believe nothing got given for that. I think when you look at where the ball was, Norgard and Endo both had a right to go for the ball. And I don't doubt that both of them were going for the ball, but it looked like Endo kind of left a foot on Norgard, like just below his knee. And you've seen them given. And I think the problem with this whole consistency thing is VAR is probably one of those where they would only overturn it. Well, they wouldn't overturn it. So whatever the referee gave, it's one of those that VAR probably wouldn't overturn. But the problem is with that, and I get that VAR should only overturn something if they consider it clear and obviously wrong. The problem with that, you're always going to get a different result because of the referee on the pitch will always subjectively go one way or the other. Pundits and ex-referees will probably say different things on that. So I think it's very, very difficult to come to a solution with that when, everyone's disagreeing. And, I'm not an expert on the rules, especially compared to referees. And if they're all disagreeing on, subjectively whether that should be a red or not, or whether there's, it's not black and white, then maybe the issue is more with the rules. But then if you think about the rules, then there's a number of different things that could happen in a game, and to revamp the rules completely so it's all black and white is also, it might even be quite unrealistic. So yeah, I'm not massively aggrieved that wasn't given, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, mate. Quite lucidly summed up there. Let's go on to Wissa, because he's getting a lot of heat as well. I think Wissa and Roerslev are the two players that have attracted the most attention on Twitter, on the Twitter sphere. The sort of pit that Twitter becomes after a Brentford loss, where everyone's just throwing in their negativity. I don't want to get called a happy clapper for this, by the way, because I do get quite negative after games too. So I'm not a happy clapper. But Wissa, Craig, he's sparked some controversy, attention. What do you make of him on Sunday? what have you made of him this season? Because I think when we talk about Wissa, it wouldn't be fair if we kind of just single him out for his bad games, because he has been good for the majority of the games this season, I would say.
He's arguably one of the most hot and cold players I've seen in a Brentford shirt, where I liken him to Romain Sawyers back when we was in the Championship, where if he has a good game, it's a blinding game, and everyone will come out afterwards, give him his plaudits, things like that, give him the credit where it's due. But if he has a bad game, he's almost invisible. It's kind of playing with 10 men. Yesterday, I don't think he had a massively bad game, but he didn't influence the play, in my opinion, whatsoever. He was just kind of putting himself about, shutting down Alisson with every goal kick that they had, running around. He was just one of those players that was there being a nuisance, but not actually doing anything, in my opinion. So, I mean, I don't know, Dan, obviously you were there with me in the away end, but like he ran around for the time that he was on the pitch. He ran around consistently, chased the ball down, shut the goalie down when the ball went back to him. I don't know what else he done though. Like, he didn't do anything else. Like, that was it.
What do you reckon, Dan?
I think when everyone's fit, I prefer Wissa as an impact sub, because I think his best quality is probably his finishing, and games open up the later they go, especially if we're normally when we're ahead, I suppose it'll open up more. But as we get more desperate for a goal and we're pushing forward, we're more likely to perhaps get that big chance. And I would trust Wissa in that situation. But in terms of wanting someone up there who can be a nuisance and who can close things down and who can perhaps even link up slightly better, I'd probably go Neil Maupay over him. And I'll be interested to see that next time we play a back five, to see, what it would look like with Maupay and Mbeumo as a front two and Wissa as more of an impact sub. But yeah,
I mean, the next time we play a back five is going to be against Arsenal. Do you see Neil Maupay? Do you see Neil Maupay making that switch for Wissa, Dan?
I like him to. I don't think he will. I don't think Thomas Frank will do that, but I would like him to. I'd like to see Yarmolenko start as well, I think, after his performance yesterday. But yeah, I'm not sure he'd do that. But yeah, would you like him to? I think I'd like him to.
Yeah, no, I think especially with how he played against West Ham, I think definitely he's been really good in the games where he's played and he started. I think he's been one of our best players. So it's quite harsh that when we switch to a back five, he kind of immediately leaves the starting lineup, just because Wissa and Mbeumo, with the way we want to play, because Wissa's got more pace, it's kind of he's better in the counter-attacking situations, or at least Thomas Frank sees that he's better in the counter-attacking situations. Yarmolenko, though, let's speak about him, because he's another impressive performance. Would you like to see him start against Arsenal, Craig? I know it's a bit of a tough ask, and again, it's one of those things where we'd like to see him start. We don't think Thomas Frank would do it, because Thomas Frank's too pragmatic, he's too clever, and he's not going to throw a young player like that into a big game against potential tight and challenging side.
So in an ideal world, for me, Janelt would go back to left back. Frank Onyeka wouldn't be anywhere near the starting 11 after the last couple of games. We gave him his plaudits a few weeks ago. He played really well, but he's again been a bit non-existent, coming on, throwing himself around on Sunday. It was just a bit embarrassing again. For me, it would be Janelt goes to left wing back, Ayers on the right, and it's Norgard, Yarmolenko, and Jensen in the middle. He's been unreal every time he's come onto the pitch. Me and my old man have the conversation after every game. Is he comes on and he's just a shining light in that midfield, and he's unreal. Unlike Mads, sometimes calm on the ball, can pick a pass. He's got pace to him. He's up and down the pitch consistently. He puts himself about. I mean, there was instances where he's got the ball on the touchline, and it might have been Trent or whoever it was, and he's flicked the ball over him, and all of a sudden we're moving up the pitch. And it's like, for someone so calm someone so young, to be so calm on the ball against a side like Liverpool, I'd start him in midfield. I think that he's had a run of substitute appearances where they've progressively got longer and longer, to the point now we're not throwing him in. We're not throwing him into the midfield at all. We've warmed him up to the point where he's now good enough, in my opinion, to start in that midfield alongside Norgard. I just think he's been brilliant.
Dan, you echoing that?
Yeah, I was telling my mate that he's seeing the next big thing, and in 5 years' time, everyone will know him. No, I'm always a bit wary to like put too much pressure on players like that because obviously he's only really played a handful of appearances off the bench, but just the way he looks after the ball, the way he can like happily flick it over one of the Liverpool players and keep the ball in that way in like tight spaces is amazing. And yeah, I think he deserves a start. He's come on at Stamford Bridge when we're 1-0 up, which is probably in that situation when you're 1-0 up and defending the lead. I think he played at least 20 minutes in that game. He's trusted, and obviously to come on at Anfield as well. I know he's a bit further behind, but they're not easy places to play. Although it was a bit quiet on Sunday, but yeah, like I think he's earned it, and to start home against Arsenal is probably a slightly better environment for him to get his first start, and nothing to lose in that game really. So I don't see why he can't offer more. And with him and Onyeka both playing that second half, or majority of the second half in Yarmoliet's case, I thought he looks better than him. And I don't know where you'd now. I don't know if you now is injured because I thought it was a bit weird he came off at halftime for Onyeka.
Yeah, 100%. I think Thomas, if you're listening, go on, Craig.
I was going to say just on Yarmoliet and his Chelsea performance, he was also unlucky not to score against Chelsea. I just mentioned about how he's calm on the ball and things like that. He's got so much pace as well. He's deceptively quick. And I think that having him alongside Norgard would do us a lot of favours because Norgard is our midfield general. He's going to hold the midfield. He'll win the ball or he'll get studied by their midfielders like he did with Endo. And then Yarmoliet can just progress the ball. He does it so well. For such a young player, does it so well.
Right, yeah. Thomas, if you're listening, Yarmoliet, give him a start against Arsenal. It's going to be difficult, obviously, because we have these kind of fanciful dreams as fans, but they just never really come true, really, especially when we're playing against Arsenal. It's going to be quite a high-stakes game. We should talk about the away end on Sunday. I have to confess I wasn't actually at the game. I was in Dublin, but I managed to find a pub and watch it. Not that I could hear the atmosphere from the away fans, but I've seen a lot of things on Twitter, and we're all quite tuned into it, considering how long we've all been doing away games at Brentford, especially sort of League Two, League One Championship days. We've been to these top six games before. I can think of basically every single top six game we've been to, bar maybe Chelsea away last season. The atmosphere is always a little bit flat. I think that would be a bit of an understatement. But Craig, I'll let you get your thoughts out on this one because I know you were keen to talk about it. So just the away end on Sunday, what went wrong?
Oh, God. Where do we start there? God, where did it go wrong? I think the general consensus across social media is it was dreadful. Like, you can see people posting saying it was the worst experience. I tweeted saying that was the worst away end that I've been in since we've been in the Premier League. And I had a couple of people responding to my message saying that they'd had other Brentford fans asking them to stop shouting, or other people in the away end asking them to stop shouting during the game. Now, right by me and my old man, we were stood there together next to two other Brentford fans on one side, and now I'm all for people coming and experiencing the away day, but there was guys who were tourists, obviously tourists. They weren't Brentford fans. I don't think they were Liverpool fans. They were just tourists. And they were sat there with their phones recording the whole game. And it sounds stupid saying it out loud, but I shit you not. The whole game, they sat there recording it. From the You'll Never Walk Alone at the start of the game, which is always dreadful whenever we go there, to them scoring, to them making substitutes and taking corners. They did everything bar celebrate the Liverpool goals. Now, there were people in front of us that were saying, he called up one of his mates, talking about Flecken, said, your keeper hasn't caught a ball this second half, jokingly, or not. I don't know if he did catch it. But jokingly or not, he said, your goalie ain't done nothing this second half. And it's like, what do you mean your goalie? You're in the Brentford end. What do you mean your goalie hasn't done that? And I went for a piss in the first half, and I counted. There was 3 people next to us. There was 2 people in front of us. And it was just after they scored. You walk down to the front, and everyone's there like that. just recording all of their fans celebrating their goals. And it was the most frustrating and embarrassing experiences as an away fan to go there to have zero atmosphere. There was maybe one or two at the beginning. People were trying, and Dan and I were just talking as you'd had some problems a moment ago about how they've changed the away end there, where previous years they've had a bit of roof which would cover the last 5 or 6 rows, but that's blocked off now. So it just goes up to a certain point, and then the upper tier starts. Obviously, they're still working on all of that, but it's almost like an open end away end now. The roof is so high that you can't generate any atmosphere there, period. It was dreadful. But it was just, they did everything but celebrate the Liverpool goals. So many people on social media have had problems with that away end. And Mike, I said to you on the first time I was on this pod, I said to you, the novelty of being in the Premier League has worn off. And that away end was full of non-Brentford fans. And I've never left the game being more frustrated with the fans than the football. We lost 3-0, and I'm more pissed off about how many people were there with their cameras out the whole game.
What do you think about that, Dan?
Yeah, I agree. I think just in general, a Sunday 2:00 kickoff doesn't create the best atmosphere in general. I think a lot of Brentford fans, like myself, probably went out Saturday night and probably weren't in their most loudest spirits on Sunday. But also, I've noticed with all the tickets for pretty much every game now, it's taking longer for Brentford to sell them. And Brentford are also starting to allow, I think I saw today for like Brighton, I'm not even sure Brighton's even gone on sale just to season ticket holders. I think it's just gone straight to season ticket holders who can also buy 6 tickets. Which is fine. I'd bring friends sometimes who never grew up supporting Brentford, but they still generally get involved, and they certainly don't stand there with their phone the whole game because I won't let them. But but yeah, my friends get involved, and they've probably kind of taken on Brentford as their at least their second team, and perhaps in some cases their first team, because like they've come to games with me in the past. But yeah, I think the atmosphere in general, home and away end, was not great yesterday.
I think I have noticed as well this
Mike,
kind of.
I have to say it's really put myself and other people who I've seen on Twitter, it's really put us off of going to away games for Big 6 clubs where we can't sell the tickets anyway. If we can't sell the tickets, get less. Stop getting the full allocation and just sell it to Brentford fans that want to be there. I would rather we took 1,800, 2,000 fans to Liverpool who are going to be loud, who are going to get behind the team, than 3,000 who are just going to sit there with their dicks in their hands, watching the football, doing nothing else. It was so frustrating. And I'd rather we had a lower, amount of tickets and more noise than more people and less atmosphere.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I noticed as well, Dan, you mentioned about how the ticket sales are going up to sort of every member can buy up to 6 tickets. And that's happening way more often than it used to. I remember sort of in the first season of the Prem, especially, that away tickets sold out like gold dust, whereas now they're quite readily available whenever you want them. It's a tricky one because I don't really know what the solution is. I mean, we've now been in the Premier League for 3 seasons, our 3rd season in the Premier League. So naturally, I feel like people are going to look at games and be like, oh, I can miss that one, and I can miss that one, I can miss that one. But I think the kickoff times really don't help. So Sunday in Liverpool, 2 p.m, everyone's got work the next day. It's a tricky one, but I'm glad we've sort of spoken about it on the pod, because I know a lot of people would want us to speak about it, just because of how mine since the game on Sunday. We'll move on. I was going to do a hot topic, but I think we might leave that this week. We could talk briefly about the Chelsea-Man City game. I mean, it was blockbuster Premier League action. Been blessed in the last couple of weeks with really good games. Obviously, the Spurs-Chelsea game last Monday night, and then Chelsea against Man City on Sunday. Are we, as much as it pains you to say, Craig, are Chelsea looking they're looking like they're running a bit of a resurgence under Pochettino. I quite like the way he's managing that team at the moment. I quite like the way some of their players are playing. It's now 3 games they've played against sort of top opposition in Liverpool. And each time I thought they've been the better side.
Well, I don't know about you, but the Chelsea game I thought was peak Premier League Barclays football. And they've gone from a mediocre team to having a 4-1 against Spurs, which obviously was not a 4-1 game, but that's besides the point. It had everything. To then a 4-4 draw at home to City, which again had everything, had VAR discussions, or controversy, actually, shall I say. VAR controversy, and just a ton of goals. And it's everything that you kind of want in a Premier League game. It was the best advert for Premier League football that we've had in such a long time.
Yeah, I think they're actually better against teams that will come at them, whereas they struggled against us because they had to break us down.
Dan, thoughts on the title race? Now we've got Arsenal, Spurs, City and Liverpool all sort of in and around that area of the top of the table. Who is the front runner in your eyes? Are we going to see another season of Man City's dominance? I know it's quite hard to look past them, but what do you think?
I've always said City, but I think if someone's going to challenge them, I think it'll be Liverpool this year. I'm not sure Arsenal are quite hitting the levels they did last season. I think Tottenham, it's far too early. Obviously, they're doing very well, but I think it's far too early for Tottenham. And Liverpool, they really impressed me actually on Sunday. I think their firepower in particular, they've got those front three. They started Gakpo again as well against us. They can bring Diaz off the bench. I think going forward, especially, they're amazing. And obviously, they've revamped their midfield. People like Van Dijk are more on form again this season. They've got perhaps the best fullbacks in the league. So I think if anyone's going to challenge City, I think it will be Liverpool. And I think they're playing in 2 weeks' time. So maybe we'll talk about that on that podcast and we'll see what it's looking like then. But I think if Liverpool turn City over in the next game, then they've got every chance.
Yeah, no, I think I agree, especially after the performance on the weekend. Really good, especially going forward. They've got so much depth in attack, and now they've got that kind of they've got all those players they needed in midfield. They look like a problem with City not looking to be hitting the heights that they did last season. Anyway, we'll round off by just going back to Brentford. Craig, what have you made of this last month's games? Obviously, the points are now coming, which is good. I wasn't really too confident going into Liverpool anyway, and we played well, better than I thought we would, and had chances and had a better XG than Liverpool. Like in another day, we could have gone 1-0 up or 2-0 up, and it could have been a very different game. And we'd be talking about 4 wins. But I think since the last international break, a lot has changed. The relegation scares are gone. What's your closing thoughts going into this international break this week?
All I'll say is I'm a lot happier where we are now compared to where we were when we left for the last international break. The last run of few fixtures we've had, sorry, can't get my bloody words out. The last run of fixtures that we've had, a lot of people went in with not very much high hopes, thinking we might only pick up a couple of points here or there. And the fact that we've taken 9 points from the last 4 games, to me, I would have taken that beforehand anyway. So I'm very happy. And I just hope that Aussie, once we kick on after the international break again, we can pick up a few more points, get to Christmas and be in a good place. Obviously, Arsenal's going to be difficult, but maybe, as Dan said about Liverpool, it might be a bit of a free hit. But we're at home. Anything could happen. So let's just kick on after Arsenal and see what happens.
100%. I think we drew a win against Arsenal as well, and we're playing them under the lights. We've got that. Should be a really good game. And I think, just echoing everything you said, really, it's been the last 4 performances, so many positives to take, and 9 points. I don't think any of us would have predicted us getting 9 points from these 4 games. So it's definitely been a fruitful period, and the opposite of what we've seen so far this season. I think that'll be a good place to wrap it up there, chaps. Ealing Road Podcast. We'll be back next week with some special episodes, so do keep your eyes peeled for that, as well as an Arsenal preview. Haven't decided yet. Probably someone who doesn't despise refs as much as the last Liverpool guy I had on. But yeah, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And remember, if you haven't listened to the podcast before, please do subscribe to our Spotify and YouTube channels, leave a rating, and follow on our socials as at the Ealing Road on Twitter and at Ealing Road Pod Instagram. Dan, Craig, it's been a pleasure, chaps, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Yes,
Thanks a lot.